Welcome to this week's edition of Right on the Money with Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management. I'm Rebecca Powers. We're so happy to have you with us. How are you doing this week, Professor?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great.
Good.
I love this time of year here in beautiful California. We have 4 offices. I want people to understand that. You specifically did those 4 offices because you wanted it to be convenient, but you'll also meet with people online, on Zoom, I guess. What is the first, let's talk about that first meeting, because I know he's all about retirement and retirees. That is his specialty. You chose this in the 90s before it was kind of the hip, cool thing. Now that with baby boomers all retiring, now everybody seems to be jumping in the game.
Well, the old country song says I was country when country wasn't cool. I was a retirement planner when retirement wasn't in vogue. I'll say it that way, you know, because I did. I went to my advisors when I passed all my tests in June the 8th of 1995, and the leading edge of baby boomers were turning 50 that year. And they asked me who I wanted to work with. I wanted to work with retirees. I had been in the ministry for 19 years. I had had people come to me because it seemed like I was always in charge of benevolence. And they had come to me and they had been trying to decide whether to buy food or medicine. Yeah. And I realized that a lot of those people, as I first got into the business and started really learning why people were broke. Yeah. Now that was in 95. That was right after the 94 downturn of 25%. And then we had about 4 great years through the dot-com boom. And then I lived and worked through the 2000, 2001, 2002 years. And I realized that people many, many times have their assets in a 25-year-old's portfolio. I'll call it that way.
Too risky.
Too risky because they've been, but it's almost fair. Because when you're 25, you're supposed to be risky. It worked, you're 35, you stay risky. Yeah. You're 45, you're not close to retiring, so you stay at risk. Yeah. But what happens is you get addicted to that 6, 7, 8, 10% growth that you're going to get in the market and on an average, and you get addicted to that. And so you feel like growth is the issue and lump sum is the issue. But when it comes to retirement, you don't need to be taking as much risk in retirement as you are taking when you're 25 years old. Go back to coaching, offensive coordinator. When you are 3 touchdowns ahead, you play your game completely different in the 4th quarter than if you're 3 touchdowns behind. Okay. When you're 25, you're 3 touchdowns behind. You've got to amass wealth. Okay, so taking a little risk, you've got time to recover, you've got time if the market goes down. It's a great buying opportunity when you're 25. But if you're 65 and you're beginning to take parts of your retirement out on a monthly basis and the market goes down 20%, you're taking significantly more pieces of that retirement out to do it. So risk is something that is so different. It's as different as offense and defense in football or baseball or basketball. It's just as the way you approach it when you're in retirement. So, and I think the biggest problem is people just don't know what risk they're taking because they've been talked to by their broker, and maybe their broker said, you know, we're going to put you in a moderate fund, we're going to put you in a balanced fund, we're going to put you. What does that mean? Exactly. I mean, what is that? Because it has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. A couple of years ago, we had a 79-year-old lady came in response to one of our events and came in and met with one of my advisors. I have 6, and we all do things exactly alike from the start to build your individualized plan. And we found out through the analysis when we did our second meeting that she was taking 95% of the risk of the market. And if that was extra money or blow money or money she could afford to use, that was one thing. But that was her base core of what she had. And she had told her broker that she wanted to be very, and she repeated this 3 times, very, very, very conservative. Let me tell you something. When you're 79 years old and that's all the money you've got, and you've told your broker to be very, very, very conservative, That broker can put you in the right stuff and not have any responsibility for what he or she has you in, because they're brokers. They've just got to prove that the product was a good product. But that is not what is in your best interest if you want to be very, very, very conservative and you're taking 95% of the risk of the market. It just doesn't happen that way. You cannot be that way.
Yeah. You said once, probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months ago in a show, and it's really stayed with me. You've worked for 30 or 40 years. You've won the game, right? You've won the game. Stop playing.
Right.
You don't need to be risking and losing sleep at night. Don't you find that so many people who are with the big box retailer, and you know the names, you know they're on big golf tournaments and skyscrapers and an office in every corner of America, they're mostly brokers.
Right.
That is mostly accumulating. That's when you're playing that game.
Right.
Let's talk about that major difference of when you get to that point, like stop risk completely.
Let me go back to the Super Bowl about 5 years ago, okay? You know me, I've got to go back to a Sports Illustration. But even you ladies, if you don't like football, you probably watched the halftime show. And if you watched a little bit more, the Atlanta Falcons were ahead of the New England Patriots by 19 points in the fourth quarter. But they kept running out of bounds and stopping the clock, because that happens in football. They kept throwing a pass and it falling incomplete and stopping the clock. They had that game won. But they kept taking risk. And what happens too many times, because that big box firm has a broker that's always kept you happy because they've made you 7, 8, 9, 10%.
Right.
Okay? Warren Buffett says, in my money, it's not the return on my money I'm concerned about anymore at my age. I'm concerned about the return of my money. Okay?
Okay.
And so you want to make sure that your money is solid. And taking risk is just something you don't have to do. There's two kinds of risk. There's the risk that you take individually and that you internally, you have a risk tolerance.
Okay.
I call it a sleep level.
Right.
You know, have the sleep number beds, not a commercial here, but I'll take any money you want to send me for promoting your product. But the sleep number bed has a sleep number, and that's your sleep number.
What's your number?
What's your number? But you have a risk tolerance number as well. There's a number that you can put the risk of the market from 0, no risk, all the way up to the 100% of the risk of the market. Like this 79-year-old lady was taking 95% of the risk of the market. And what happens is that's your risk level number. The other risk number is your portfolio. What kind of risk are you invested in? How risky is that portfolio? There's a score for that too. What we do when we put together a retirement blueprint is, in part of the analysis stage when it comes to your investments, we do 2 tests. And the test is from you to give your risk score, and the test is on your portfolio, and that portfolio has a score, and we match those up. And Rebecca, it's not uncommon. Yeah. For somebody to come in at a 30 or a 40% risk level, which is probably what a normal person should be when they're in their 60s, but yet their portfolio is taking 80% of the risk of the market. That is definitely not compatible. That is not a matchup. And you know when you're going to be happy? You're going to be happy for 13 years, from 2009 until 2022. When the market hits down in 22, that's when you're going to hurt. Warren Buffett, the same guy, said way back in 2020, he said, we've had such a run of 11 or 12 years here of the market being up, and people are taking far too much risk. We'll tell you why next segment, but they're taking far too much risk. And he said it's like the tide, but when the tide goes back, we're going to find out who's been swimming naked. All right? You want to find out if you're swimming naked? Let me tell you, that's something we can do. It's not really in those kind of numbers and in those kind of terms, but we can tell you what kind of risk you're taking. But you have to call in, and you have to make an appointment with one of our advisors. Come in, bring your stuff. You know, it's like going to a doctor to get a physical. Do I need to bring my body? Yeah, you know, you can't
That would
really
help.
You can't do that physical by Zoom.
Right.
Okay, because they've got to just test you inside and out. We've got to look at your stuff, and we can tell you what your risk level is by giving you an evaluation, and we can tell you what your portfolio is taking, but you got to make the call, and there's no risk to that. There's no cost to that. You just call us. We'll get you on our schedule. The number is 866, you see it on the screen, 866-709-1462, and if you know how to use QR codes, there's the QR code. You can sign up for it. If you call in, you can't find an operator that's available, they'll try to call you back, but screening that QR code, you won't talk to anybody. When you do that, you'll give your information. You can get on our calendar, directly onto our calendar. We'd love to help you.
And not only do you see the risk that you're actually in this third-party report, you also see the fees. And that, for my husband and me, was extremely eye-opening. So we'll kind of touch on that and how, if you should know that your person is a fiduciary, an advisor, or a broker, there is a difference. Stay with us. More with Tom Mosley and Right on the Money after this.
Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Ben. Hey, birthday party for Carol and 5. Happy birthday to you.
Good morning, Ben. Happy Monday.
Daryl's birthday, be there every square. Happy birthday to you. As you can see from our quarterly report on slide number 62, we're trending in the right direction. All signs point to a very positive outlook for the next several years. If you peel back the onion...
Ben, do you have anything to add?
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back. We're talking about risk, and you've said many times, Tom, the word risk and retirement do not belong together. They should not even be in the same sentence. How do we know our true risk, and how do we change it?
Well, you know your true risk by taking the evaluations. There's no other way. It's
Yeah.
not like, let me see how the wind's blowing today, and it must be moderate today, or it must be growth today. And a lot of people are that way because the stock market in the past couple of years have been so up and so down that they're tossed about. There's a scripture that talks about being tossed about by every wind of doctrine. This is almost like being tossed about by every whim of the stock market. You know, I'll bring that into a financial context there. But what happens sometimes when people are working with what you so aptly call the big financial firms, the big box firms that are selling everything in wholesale and that are selling everything, and it's not so much personalized. What happens sometimes, like from 2009 to 2021, we had 13 years of unprecedented growth, except for maybe back from 1982 to about 1999. Okay? We had 13 years where everything was going great. So you go golfing with your buddy, or you go to somewhere and you meet with the ladies, and you go out to dinner with the ladies, and somebody says, well, my broker made me 14%. Okay, so you go back to your broker and you say, well, I was with one of my buddies and she made 14% last year. I was with one of my golfing buddies and he made 12%. And your broker might even have talked to you about risk and your risk tolerance and how much risk that you want to take or you need to take. But they want to keep you happy. So what do? Everything's going up anyway, and you want a little more gain? I can make that change. And so they ratchet up your risk, and they ratchet up your risk, and you go a little faster and a little faster, and you take a little bit more risk, and you're out there, and then boom, along comes 2022. Like Warren Buffett says, you find out you're swimming naked. So one reason that people suffered so much, because I have had people bring statements in the past 6 months, and they were down some 42%, 47%. And these are retirees. The person I'm thinking about at 47% is 76 years old. That's all the money he's got left for the rest of his life. So you know, that's really one way. The other way is the old traditional, well, if you want to take less risk or more risk, we can change the stock-bond ratio. Now, I want to make sure you are aware of something. That stock-bond ratio hasn't worked for years, but it's still being used in basically 401ks, because that's what you've got in a lot of your 401ks with the target funds or the retirement date funds, because it's just a changing of stock and bonds. Look at last year. Last year, stocks were down 22%, and bonds were down 20%.
And that's normally doesn't happen, right? They used to teeter-totter. Now they're the same.
They used to, but they haven't for a long time. Here's another tie-in. People call me all the time. Tom, I'm scared. Should I put my money in gold? Just watch it. If you've got a smartphone, use that little squiggly app, that's the stock market, and pull up gold and put that on your calculator and pull up the stock market. And you'll find out that so many, by far, 80, 90% of the days, when gold's up, stock's up. When bonds are up, stock's up. When bonds are down, stocks are down. When gold's down, stocks are down. They all run hand in hand.
Really?
Yeah, because it's such an available commodity. And people say, well, if things really, really bad happen, I'd sure want to have gold. If things really, really bad happen and we shut down the entire economy and everything went to proverbially, I can't say that very well.
You can't say that word on television,
Yeah,
Tom.
but if it went to hell in a handbasket, so to speak, okay, I don't want gold, I want a garden. Okay, I want the fruit trees in my backyard. I want something solid and something tangible, because there's going to come a time when gold's not valuable as opposed to being just sustainable, just things that are able to keep you alive. So you can't really deal in that catastrophic, fear-mongering things that are happening out there, but you can when it comes to investing your money. Now, this stock-bond ratio and taking risk, you know, Jeremy Siegel, I'll use his name. I like to brag and say I was on the same platform with him in Louisville, Kentucky in 2019, because it's true. And he spoke, and then I spoke right after him. So I'm right there with Jeremy Siegel one time. But he's the chief economist at the Wharton School of Business. He recently came out and he says, you know, bonds are not nearly as good an investment for the safety side of your portfolio as a fixed indexed annuity. I'm not saying that. Jeremy Siegel's saying that. The chief guy through Kiplinger wrote a big article about 2 years ago. You can Google it, Kiplinger fixed indexed annuity article, and you can find that he did analysis, and he said fixed indexed annuities are better than bonds, and they have been for years as far as that base of your portfolio. So when you're taking a risk, you don't want to have both sides of the equation at risk. You want to have something that's solid and something that acts the way bonds used to act when stocks go down. And the best thing on the market right now, there's also an article in USA Today. There's also articles in Wall Street Journal. You Google it, you do the work, you look it up, and you'll find out that you need to take a new look at not variable annuities or fixed annuities, but fixed indexed annuities to remove some of the risk of that portfolio. You're going to like this. Most of the annuities that we use, all of the annuities that we use are fixed indexed annuities because they have zero risk, and the ones that we place have zero fees coming out of your account. So zero risk, zero fees, and you're going to gain about 4 to 6% a year on an average, and you're going to be solid with no downturn. That's the way to take risk out as opposed to just balancing stocks and bonds. Hey, we can talk to you about your situation because your situation's entirely different. You may have fixed indexed annuities and you just need somebody to work on getting your stock portfolio to the right risk level. Or you may not have anything stable that's really valuable. You need somebody to build you a personal plan. You're so close. You are so close. You know that old game where you're getting warm, you're getting warm, you're getting warm. I tell you how warm you are. you got to call 866-709-1462. I have not one doubt in my mind that we can help you. But you've got to also want that help as badly as we want to help you. 866-709-1462. It's your move.
And the best time to start is today. Don't feel bad that you didn't do this 5 years ago, because today is the perfect day to give us a call. We'll be right back with Tom Mosley. More right after this.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back. I'm Rebecca Powers here with Tom Mosley. We call him the professor because he has taught thousands of families. And of course, you've taught in schools, and you've been a pastor, and you have this beautiful, big, holistic approach. We were talking about the big boxes. I want people to understand, when you were mentioning fixed index annuities, you are not with one company.
No.
So you can lean back in your recliner chair and look at every company in the world and pick the very best products that they are selling. You're not handcuffed to one certain product. So I just wanted people to understand that. What do you think, besides having too much money in the market, as far as risky, for saying 79-year-old person that you mentioned, what do you think is the second mistake that people make when it comes to risk and not understanding it?
Well, Rebecca, I hate to do this on TV, but I need to correct you. The first mistake is not having a plan.
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying?
That's right. The focus of this entire show is that plan.
I mean, and I know, because you've been with me for so long, and I love every minute that we're together.
Me
and
too.
You were just taking that plan as an assumption, but so many of you have a 401k or an IRA, or if you're married, maybe you have 2 401ks, a 403b, 4 plans. You have IRAs, SEP IRAs. You have all these things running out your ears. One of the things we help people, by the way, is just consolidating a lot of that stuff. But you have all of those, and you think those are your plan, okay? Now, I don't ever want us to just assume that we can do this specialty or that specialty or this specialty. The biggest specialty we can do for you is build a plan. Now, what you've got, you know, don't get rid of your 401ks and give it away, okay, to charity, okay? Might be if you want to do that. But that is your lumberyard. But what you have to do when you get close to retirement and you start thinking about a plan, and Rebecca knows this, we talk about this every single show. The plan is the key. And you need to take those statements, because all of those 401ks and 403bs, they're not a plan, they're a statement. There's no addressing of income in there. There's no addressing of risk in a 401k. It's hard to find out what the risk you're taking. And you know, you always bring up fees. Okay.
Yes, because I felt tricked by that too. We were paying way more than we realized, and that does not feel good to be tricked.
It's underneath it. I mean, it's underneath in the 401ks. People come in, they say, I'm in a 401k, I'm not paying any fees. Oh, yes, you are.
Yeah.
You are paying some pretty healthy fees within those. So all of those things are just statements, and they're like, I liken it to the lumberyard. I have a client, and he works with one of the Ganal Lumber Company. And it's all over Southern California. You've seen them. And I went to lunch with him one day, and he said, do you want to see the yard? So we went outside, and we saw the yard, and there were 2x4s, 2x6s, all kinds of lumber. And underneath the shed, there were doors, there were windows, there was sheetrock and plywood, and up against the wall, there were trusses, roof trusses. Now, if all of that was on a vacant lot on your block, and you were to go home and see that, what would you think they were going to do?
Building a house.
But you wouldn't stop and say, what a beautiful house laying there.
Right.
What does it take to turn the lumber yard into a beautiful house? It takes a blueprint. Ask somebody who's built a house. It takes a blueprint, and that's what we do. We take your lumber yard, and the size of your house is always determined by the size of your lumber yard, so it's good to have a big lump sum. Don't minimize that. But we take that lumber yard, and a lot of people have all of their money in stock. That's like building your whole house out of doors.
Right.
A lot of people have all of their money in the bank. That's like building your whole house out of just pieces of sheetrock.
Right.
And usually you only see that under bridges, okay? Right. So you need a plan that takes that lumber yard and all of the different aspects and identifies and tells that lumber yard what you want it to do. I want this part of my plan to address my income, and I want it to take care of inflation. Okay, and I want this part of my plan just to stay in investments, because I'm going to live a long time. I need some growth, and I need it to grow, and I can't be a glider and no engine. I've got to grow it a little bit. So that's in investments. And then I want this part of my plan. I want the part that's still got to be taxed. I want to address that so that I address it on my terms, and I don't address it on the government's terms, because they have a tax plan for you, and it sort of leans in their benefit, okay?
Yeah.
Like this far. And you need a plan, that leans in your benefit, and you get taxed. You're going to get taxed on it. Let's clear that. You're going to get taxed on it, but you need to get taxed on it in your way and in your plan. And then, how am I going to take care of health care? Because you can have all of the good insurance policies in the world, but if you need long-term care, you're going to need to have not necessarily a policy, but you're going to have to think about in that blueprint for your retirement, how are we going to take care of it? You're going to have at least to have thought through it before, okay?
Yeah.
When a pilot has trouble with a plane, it's not, oh, I wish I'd have read that manual, okay? They have read the manual, and it's in the plan, all right? And that's what we mean. And then legacy, that's the final thing. How are we going to leave it? All of those things we've talked about in this segment, that's what we offer you, to take your lumber yard, to put a blueprint together, to build it into a retirement house that you can live in that addresses those things. Hey, give us a call. Thank you so much for watching this show. We're on every week. We're on the radio, KNX at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning in Los Angeles, KOGO at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning in the San Diego area. Tell somebody about us, and we'll see you next week. And Rebecca, tell them how they can get in touch with us.
Thank you so much, Tom. I love working with you. 866-709-1462. This truly is the call that could change your life. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.